Here's good news. The human brain is a powerful tool for getting rid of bias. We've had a conventional wisdom in the world of diversity that said, once you got a bias, you can't do a darn old thing about it. All you can do is work around it. All you can do is make adjustments for it. When the truth of the matter is, I feel that that attitude is an excuse not to succeed. So what I'm asking you to do, watch the first thought that pops into your brain when you see someone whom you perceive to be different from yourself. Now, that doesn't necessarily automatically mean that that's a bias. I don't want to go that far. But it's a clue. It's like a trace evidence, possibly, of a bias. It becomes a bias if, this is where it gets tricky, after seeing that the person does not conform to your first thought, you rationalize what you see to conform to your expectation. Well, they don't conform to my bias, but I'll bet there's a reason. Okay. I did a program for a fancy Beverly Hills hotel a lot of years ago, and the HR director told me this after we'd done the workshop, and she said she had to hire a director of sales for the company, and she was interviewing a young woman who was perfect. I mean, knew the industry. Sharp as a tack, assertive, direct eye contact, all the good kinds of things you need to form those sales relationships. And the applicant appeared to be Asian to the woman that was doing the interviewing. And she was saying, hey, this is hot. I've got my woman. This is fantastic. But before she said anything about hiring her, the HR director looked down at the application. And there was something in that application that told her that the applicant was born and raised in Japan. She said this was too weird. Instantly, into her head popped an image. Another applicant for the job, essentially, of a woman who was shy, retiring, and soft-spoken. Okay? Heck, took little steps, something straight out of a Hollywood movie. And she sat there, this is all happening lightning fast, and she didn't realize till after we discussed the issue. But into her head comes this person who wouldn't have the personality for the job. Sitting opposite her is the perfect applicant. Okay? She had a choice to make. Shove the bias aside, shove that first impression aside, long enough to see this person for who she was and hire her, or rationalize what she's seeing to fit what's inside her head, because that's what we want to do. It's a thing called cognitive dissonance. We can't stand it. We have to have the outside conforming to what's in our head. So we got to do something about it. Tragically, she chose to rationalize. And what she said to herself is, well, I'll bet that this woman isn't really assertive. I'll bet that she stopped off at Barnes & Noble and picked up a book about how to interview in American culture and is faking it. And when she walks out the door, she's suddenly going to revert to this shy, retiring, soft-spoken person. She did not hire that woman. Who did? The competitor down the block hired her. And through the next 5 years, took hundreds of thousands of dollars of convention business away that she would have had. All because of that one quick moment of rationalizing what she saw, rather than having the courage to say, I am wrong. Remember that next time you're making a decision. Then I asked her another question. What about everybody else in the neighborhood? And she looked back at me completely guilelessly, completely innocent, without any awareness of the irony, and said, oh, they are wonderful people. I wouldn't live anywhere else. We have barbecues together. We take care of each other's kids. We go to church together. It's just a wonderful neighborhood. So then I asked her, how come then, when I asked you for a bias, you didn't say all Mexicans are wonderful people, which is, of course, equally ridiculous. And she looked back at me and she actually teared up a little bit, and she said, I can't believe I did that. I allowed
these two creepy kids to color my perception of an entire population of people. And this was one of the good women. This was a nice person. This was an educated person. This was an intelligent person. And she still allowed the terror of that moment, the one or two vendors that let you down, to color her perception of an entire group.
Now, one way to defeat these biases that you become aware of in our 20 minutes is to dissect them to weaken their foundation. And the best way to do that is to take a look, you're intellectualizing it. And you ask yourself, for example, among other questions, how did I learn it? Where did it come from, very specifically? So question to you from me is, where generally do we learn biases? Parents, you bet. Friends, yeah. Society, experience.
Members of any group are capable of bias. You know, this is a baby of mine, and this is one of the things I like to talk about in my work a lot. This is not a white thing, you know, it's not even a white guy thing, you know, it's all of us. It's minorities, it's women, it's people that can't see, you know, it's everybody has this kind of biases. Let me give you an example of one that I encountered a couple of years ago. I was speaking at a conference in Seattle, Washington on women in technology. And the way it was set up was that we, the speakers and attendees, were housed in a hotel. The meeting facility was elsewhere, and we were bused from the hotel over to the meeting facility. On the first morning of the meeting, I got down there early, got on the bus, was the first one on board, and sat all the way at the back so that I could kind of watch the people that got on and kind of gauge the audience and that kind of a thing. And I sat there and I watched as women got on, because it was 99% attended by women. And each and every woman that boarded that bus was greeted by the earlier arrivals with a friendly hello, a welcoming how are you, and in every single case, the woman that was there before would offer to move what we call our stuff from the seat beside her, put it on the floor, and invite the newcomer to sit down. And this happened over and over and over again. Friendly hello, welcoming how are you, and an offer to move her stuff, put in front of her, and invite the person to sit down. Friendly hello, welcome, how are you, offer to move her stuff, put it in front of her, invite the person to sit down. That is until a man boarded the bus. Looked to be about 40 years old, nice looking kind of a guy, nicely dressed, about 5'10". And a man who was desperately uncomfortable. And I could tell by that deliberate stare down the center aisle of the bus. And why? Because he was greeted with not one friendly hello, not one welcoming how are you, and not one of those women offered to move her stuff, put it in front of her, and invite him to sit down. Folks, that sure looked like bias to me. As I walked on up the street, I asked myself this question. First of all, Thiederman, this is how you make your living. How could you be going around behaving this way? And then I asked myself, this is odd. Historically, 4 of your bad experiences were with white guys. You think I'd be running around going, ooh, it's a white guy, watch out. But I don't do that. Because there was media involved and a little bit of family message and other things that kind of all schmoozed together to create that bias. But here's the question that really matters. Would I jump again today? Truth, I honestly don't know. But I'll tell you this much, I'd feel the urge to jump, and that's for sure. Because that bias is still kind of lurking down here because it's constantly reinforced by the media. But here's what I hope I would do. And this is the principle that I'm asking you to do. And that is to be in the moment, to use your intellect, to use your knowledge of the biases that you've become aware of through being so mindful, and to have the courage and the intellect and the ability to take that thought, that bias, and shove it aside long enough to see this person for who he is. That rarest of creatures, a man who was lost and was willing to ask directions.